On this screen, we have a fully functional Android app. It asks a multiple-choice question, lets the user select an answer, and when we tap Submit, a small pop-up message, called a toast, confirms the exact selection. Over the next few minutes, we're going to build this exact application from scratch. We'll start by configuring a new project, design the user interface, and finally write the logic that makes these buttons interactive. To follow along, you only need one thing ready to go: have Android Studio installed and opened on your machine. Every Android app relies on a core divide. Visual layout files dictate what the app looks like, and back-end logic files dictate how the app behaves. Understanding how to connect these two halves is the foundation of all Android development. Start by clicking New Project right here on the Android Studio welcome screen. This brings us to the template selection window. For a blank canvas, select the option labeled Empty Activity. In Android development, an activity simply refers to a single user interface screen. By choosing an empty activity, we're generating a single blank screen to build upon. Next, we fill out the project details, give the application a name, and make sure the programming language is set to Java. Directly below that, set the minimum SDK to API 24, which corresponds to Android NuGet. Once the project generates, Android Studio creates two critical files for us. Under the res and layout folders, we have activity.main.xml for our visuals. Under the Java folder, we have MainActivity.java for our logic. By setting that minimum SDK to API 24 earlier, we ensured that this generated code can run on older operating systems, keeping the app accessible to the vast majority of active Android devices. Let's build the interface. Open activitymain.xml to access the visual layout editor. This blueprint view shows us exactly how our user interface components stack and align. Everything is organized inside bounding boxes that keep the layout structured. First, we place a text element at the top. This will display our quiz question. Select your subject. Below the text, we add a RadioGroup widget. When building a multiple-choice prompt, a RadioGroup ensures that a user can only select one option at a time. Inside that RadioGroup, we nest 4 individual radio buttons, one for each of our possible subjects. Finally, we place 2 standard buttons at the bottom of the screen, one to clear the selection and one to submit the answer. Before moving on, check the ID attribute for each of these elements in your Properties panel. You must give them exact, recognizable names like Submit, Clear, and Group Radio. Those IDs act as the specific addresses for every visual element. Without them, our back-end code would have no way to locate these buttons and make them interactive. Now that the interface is built, open the MainActivity.java file. To make our buttons work, we have to connect them to our Java code. We do this by creating variables in Java and using a method called findViewById to link those variables directly to the exact XML IDs we set up earlier. Next, we write a quick command, radioGroup.clearCheck. This ensures that when the app first opens, all the radio buttons are blank, giving the user a clean slate. Now we need the app to react to user taps. We achieve this by attaching an onClickListener to our Submit button. Inside that listener, we write conditional logic that checks the radio group to see exactly which button ID is currently selected. Once the code identifies the selected answer, we instruct it to generate a toast message. This grabs the text of the chosen button and displays it in a short floating alert on the screen. Finally, we attach one more listener to our Clear button. Inside this one, we reuse our ClearCheck command to wipe the current selection. These event listeners sit quietly in the background. They act as the app's nervous system, waiting for the user to tap the screen before executing their assigned commands. Let's run the completed application on our Android emulator to see it all come together. If we tap DBMS, it highlights. If we change our mind and tap Algorithms, the first option deselects automatically, proving our radio group is working. Tapping the Submit button instantly brings up our toast message at the bottom, confirming that the Java listener successfully grabbed our answer. And tapping the Clear button immediately resets the entire group back to its default unchecked state. The application is now complete. By mapping a visual ID in XML to an event listener in Java, you've executed the standard workflow for processing user input on an Android screen.